My name is Cale Bigelow. I am a professor in the Horticulture and Landscape Architecture Department at Purdue University, and I am a turfgrass scientist. Yeah, so one of the questions that we oftentimes get is what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages of a natural grass field or a synthetic field? And again, one of the really important things to understand here is both of these are tools as far as providing a surface for whatever game it might be, field hockey, football, soccer. And then the other thing you need to really be thinking about is how is this particular field going to be used at a particular time of year? And then what is the use intensity of that field? And what we know about natural grass fields is they're really good, and they're actually preferred by a lot of athletes in most circumstances, but they are limited by how much they can grow and recover. So if you have a heavily used athletic field, sometimes the synthetic fields are more appropriate, particularly for landlocked places where they don't have a lot of locations that they can rotate some of the different sports or events around. And I'll give you a great example of that. Is one of the things that sometimes people don't really think about with respect to some of these athletic fields is our bands. And bands are oftentimes practicing very intensely in very localized areas on fields. And so what we've seen happen across the United States is that in some situations, some of the high school or college bands are actually installing these synthetic surfaces simply because a natural grass surface would not tolerate the wear and the intensity of something like band use. So this is a hugely debated topic. Is the natural grass surface safer than the artificial or synthetic surface? And bottom line is we don't have all the data yet. And there are a number of studies that are being conducted throughout the United States, throughout the world actually, looking at the safety factors and injury rates on natural grass as opposed to some of our synthetic fields. The data seems to indicate that it depends, right? And it depends upon a whole bunch of different factors. It depends upon the athlete, it depends upon the sport. In general here, the data seems to indicate that the natural grass surfaces are slightly more safe. But what I can also tell you is a frozen natural grass field is not as safe as a non-frozen synthetic field. So one of the other things that we oftentimes are asked about is some of the differences between a natural grass field and a synthetic field. And we're pretty lucky to be here at Purdue's football complex, their practice football complex, because over here we have a natural grass surface. And this natural grass surface is actually a warm season grass called Bermuda grass that's winter overseeded with perennial ryegrass to keep it green during the cooler temperatures. But it's built on sand. And one of the reasons that it's built on sand is sand generally does not compact, and it also drains really well if we have some light rain events. By the same token, we have one of our synthetic fields over here that is basically an all-weather use field. And what we've seen a lot in recent years as far as the synthetic fields is these infill systems. And these infill systems are basically like a really tall shag carpet. And then within this shag carpet, we have a mixture of sometimes a mixture of crumb rubber, sometimes crumb rubber with a coarse sand to help it to help it to drain. But what they do is they take that infill and they put it in these fibers. And this generation or these generations of these synthetic fields are actually much better than what we had decades and decades ago, because if an athlete puts their foot into this, there's still some give and twist, which does promote better safety as far as those fields. And so bottom line is, natural grass field, synthetic field, there is no perfect grass, but again, this football program is actually very lucky because they have both systems that they can use at different times of the year, depending upon weather conditions and everything else that might be present. Yeah, you can see how that kind of pulled up right there. So that's, cleat can dig into that and then release